Hi there, welcome back to the channel. Today I want to talk about the Conn Smythe conversation. I want to talk about, you know, if of all the remaining teams left in the Stanley Cup playoffs, all the 8 teams left remaining, if each team were to win it, which player on that team would win the Conn Smythe Trophy, the most valuable player in the playoffs for said team? So I just want to go through each team and talk about, which player is doing the best and having some, a really nice playoff so far. So I want to start in the West, and I want to start with the Dallas Stars because this player is doing unbelievable things, and it's in Dallas, and it's Mikko Rantanen. So I think if the Dallas Stars were to go on, beat the Winnipeg Jets, beat one of Vegas and Edmonton, and then win the Stanley Cup, I think Mikko Rantanen's getting that Conn Smythe trophy. He's been unbelievable. We saw just how unbelievable he has been. We saw 2 instances of hat tricks. He did it in back-to-back games. He's right now he's looking like Mr. Clutch. He did it against his former team, Game 7, gets a hat trick to finish out the series, go to round 2, and then first game of round 2 against the Winnipeg Jets, he gets another hat trick. So he's up to 15 points now in the playoffs with 8 goals and 7 assists. Mikko Rantanen, it would be unbelievable, I think, just from a narrative standpoint, if the Dallas Stars were to win the Cup, because they end up getting a superstar who the Colorado Avalanche should have never let go. They should have never traded him. But that's a conversation for a different time. Mikko Rantanen, absolutely, if they were to win the Stanley Cup, the Stars, he deserves it. Moving on to the Winnipeg Jets, their rival right now in the playoffs. I have the Winnipeg Jets, if they win it all, which would be so crazy, it would also fulfill my bracket prediction. I have Kyle Connor winning the Cup. Now, if, the Winnipeg Jets go that far, they go all the way to the finals, they win it all, they might get there because Connor Hellebuyck turns around his game, and is able to turn into the Hellebuyck of the regular season that we all know and love. But just based on his play right now, I think that Kyle Connor definitely deserves to be the one that is talked about in this conversation of the Conn Smythe, because he is their MVP right now. Kyle Connor is, he's got 12 points already in the playoffs, with 4 goals and 8 assists. He's had some games where he's just so clearly the MVP on that team, and he's kind of putting the team on his back. I know they've gotten some nice performances from Pionk, with Morrissey being out, and Scheifele's obviously been good when he's in the lineup. But I think it's not a controversial pick to say that Kyle Connor, and I think it'd be a crazy thing if the Jets were to win it from a narrative standpoint again, because Kyle Connor's thought a lot of times thought I was like such an underrated player, and for last year, Alexander Barkov wins the Cup, and so I think if Kyle Connor would win and then win the Conn Smythe, I think we start seeing those underrated forwards. I know that Barkov's not underrated anymore, but and Kyle Connor probably shouldn't be either. He's such a good goal scorer, but it's just kind of cool to see people who are not usually getting their flowers to finally get them. Moving on to the Pacific teams, I think we go Oilers here, and there's really only 2 choices. Is it Connor McDavid? Is it Leon Draisaitl? I go with Connor McDavid. I think that if the Oilers were to finally get it done this year, finally get their cup, and get revenge from last season when they were 1 game away, I think Connor McDavid gets back-to-back Conn Smythes if that were to happen. Look, Leon Draisaitl, 13 points, right? 13 points and 5 goals and 8 assists. Leon Draisaitl, a lot of people would argue that it should be him because he's had an unbelievable playoffs as well already. They're both in the top 4 point getters right now. So I think you could go either way and be okay with that. But McDavid, there's definitely, when whoever votes for the Conn Smythe, whoever votes for the person to get it, I think they bring in the narratives, they bring in, what impact. And I think McDavid and his ability to lead this team, if they do get the Stanley Cup, and it's Canada's first cup in 32 years, I think McDavid gets it back to back. And then moving on to the team that they're facing off against, the Vegas Golden Knights. If they were to win the cup and get their second cup in franchise history, I don't know how you don't give the Conn Smythe to Jack Eichel. Jack Eichel, he wasn't, when they gave it to Marchessault when they won the cup in 2023, he was one of the original misfits. Is what they would call the group that was originally there in Vegas when they're at their inception. And so I think that was a really cool thing, because the narrative is that they were there since the beginning of Vegas, and now one of them is able to be the MVP for the team when they win it all. And but this time around, if they were to win it again, I think Jack Eichel should get it. His points speak for themselves. He's got over a point per game. He's only got the one goal, but he's got 8 assists, and he just looks, whenever he's out there. I know that recently McDavid kind of steamrolled him and blew past him to win Game 2. But Jack Eichel is the best forward and the best player out there for Vegas. So if they were to go and win it all, beat Edmonton, come back from this 2-0 deficit, and win it all, Jack Eichel should be the player to get the most valuable consideration. Going on to the Eastern Conference, this one's a little bit more difficult, I think. I don't think there's such clear-cut winners if any of these teams were to win the Stanley Cup. But the Carolina Hurricanes, if they were to win the Stanley Cup, finally get over the hump, and they can lose in almost any round, but always be seen as like a team that can win it all for good reason. They've got so many good pieces, but if they were to finally get over the hump and get it done, Sebastian Aho should be the Conn Smythe winner. He is their best star, and there's some conversation about whether he should even be considered a star. Is his production worthy of that conversation? But of the stars they have currently, Sebastian Aho's him. Their defense, they're such a great defense unit. You could say that Slavin deserves it, but a lot of the time, for the Conn Smythe consideration, you're going to look at the person who produces the most, is able to get the goals on the board. And Aho in Carolina, he's clutch. He scored the overtime winner to defeat the New Jersey Devils in the first round. He's got 9 goals, 9 points, 3 goals, 6 assists to get to those points, over a point per game. The Carolina Hurricanes, it would be really cool to see them get done. They've only got one other cup in their history, and Aho has been there for so long. So if he were to do it, that would be such a cool story, and I'd be really rooting for him. I've been a fan of his for a long time. Going on to the Washington Capitals. Whew, that's a tough one. This is one I'd probably have to think about I've had to think about for a little bit. You could definitely go Ovechkin. If the Washington Capitals would get it done, again, when they were a team that was maybe looking to go into a rebuild, they retool on the fly, and it's probably the best retool of any team I've ever seen. In terms of just being able to do it on the fly, don't be bad for that long, and just pick up pieces that were underrated or whatever, come back and be as good as they are right now in the second round, the second best team in the regular season. So you could definitely say that Alex Ovechkin, after this unbelievable season he's had, beating Gretzky's record, I mean, what a narrative, right? And maybe they go that way. Maybe the voters end up going that way and pick Ovechkin. But I think that if they get that far, they actually do it. They win it all. Oh my gosh. Just thinking about it's kind of crazy. I think it's got to be Logan Thompson, their goalie. He's been kind of lights out from a goals against just perspective. He's averaging 2.01 goals against. His save percentage is .931. He's been their starter the whole. He's started 7 games. I believe he's been the starter for all these games. So Logan Thompson, I think he's a huge reason. I'm not saying that the Capitals' defense is bad. I'm not saying he's got to save everything, but I think that he's one of the biggest. I think personally, he's the biggest reason um, why they're here. And it's not like they couldn't get past Montreal, but if they're gonna do this all, they're gonna beat Carolina and then have to beat one of Toronto or Florida and then win the Stanley Cup against whatever Western team that is. I think Ovechkin, he's so good, but they've got other players now. You've got Tom Wilson there. You've got Dylan Strome, who's had a great season, a great rebound season. Mangiapane is really producing. But for Logan Thompson to come in, this is his first year in Washington, to come in after being the backup in Vegas and kind of have that chip on his shoulder. It would be really cool to see him win the Conn Smythe and be recognized as the most valuable player. So 2 teams left, going on to the Atlantic teams. I go on to the Toronto Maple Leafs. Look, if the narrative's true that 1967 it keeps showing up and they win the Stanley Cup and make all of Toronto, the most happy people in the world and make everyone else, not that happy. Personally, I wouldn't mind to see Toronto win it all. I'd be very happy. I'm a big fan of Steve Dangle, as I've said before. So to see him happy, see, Jesse and Adam happy, that would be pretty cool to see. But if they were to get it done, you got to have that core 4 conversation. Which one of their core 4 stepped up? I don't think you give it to one of their goalies, just because neither one has been, with Anthony Stolarz now having an injury, and he may be out all series. Who knows? But if they get that far, and then Woll, he's there. Who knows if that Stolarz comes back, and then they go to Stolarz again. So I think that they kind of dilute each other in a sense. I think you go with William Nylander. William Nylander has been almost perfect. There's a game or two I'd say that it was a little lazy on the back check, but in terms of point production, he's the tip of the spear. He's tied with Mikko Rantanen for leading the playoffs in points with 15 points in 9 games, 6 goals, 9 assists. He's got multiple 2 goals or more games. William Nylander has been fantastic. And if they were to get it done, he's also regarded a lot as the guy who, out of the core 4, he's got the most ice in his veins kind of player. Matthews, he looks a little, stirred sometimes. Mitch Marner, obviously, we know Mitch Marner can get shaken and look not confident. And Tavares has been good, but I think Nylander's the guy that, when you think of Nylander, you think gamer. And Nylander deserves it if the Toronto Maple Leafs defy all odds and get it done and win the Stanley Cup for the first time since before the moon landing. And then lastly, the Florida Panthers. If they win back-to-back cups, who should be the Conn Smythe winner? This one's the hardest for me. This and the Capitals. That was kind of hard. But who should be the Conn Smythe winner? Who's the most valuable in the Panthers for the playoffs this year? And I wish I could say it was Alexander Barkov, because, if McDavid didn't put the numbers he put up last year, I wanted Barkov to win it so very badly. I love Barkov. He's my favorite player that's not on the Blackhawks. But I think that the Conn Smythe for the Panthers, if they were to win it again, should go to Brad Marchand. He's completely surprised me. Not because I thought he would have a bad playoffs by any stretch of the imagination. He's Brad Marchand. But he, he's got 2 goals, 6 assists for 8 points in 8 games. He's been kind of their clutch player. Tkachuk isn't showing up as much, and Barkov, for points-wise, isn't really showing up too much. It's the defensive game that is just so needed for him. Needed for their team, because he always shows up in that regard. But Brad Marchand, just points wise, and it's just so incredible because I think he's 37 years old. I have to fact check that, but he's up there, right? He's up there in age, and we already started seeing in the regular season this season his play or his production at least begin to drop off. He's lost a step, right? But he's turning it on in the playoffs. And what's weird is that let's say the Florida Panthers go back to back, win the Stanley Cup, and he wins the Conn Smythe. I don't even know if they'd have the cap space to afford to re-sign him in the offseason, which is just unbelievable. But good for Brad Marchand. Really don't always love the guy in terms of his on-ice antics, but there's no denying that what he's doing in the playoffs is pretty spectacular. But yeah, those are my picks for if each team were to win the Stanley Cup, who would be the Conn Smythe winner for said team. So thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.